In question, Robert Jenrick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To ask the Secretary of State for Justice to make a statement on the national security risk of drones being used to deliver weapons to high-security prisons.
Minister. Dakin.
Mr. Speaker, this is not a new issue. Effective prison security is fundamental to the rehabilitative nature of prisons and ensuring public confidence in the criminal justice system. The availability of illicit items in our jails, including drugs and mobile phones, undermines prison officers' abilities to do their jobs. Drone sightings around prisons in England and Wales are a matter of great concern and pose a major threat to prison security. This government inherited a prison system in crisis with violence and drug use on the rise. We are working hard to deter, detect and disrupt the use of drones. It's not possible to talk in detail of the tactics that we use to disrupt drones, given the obvious security implications. What I can say is His Majesty's Prisons and Probation Service invests in targeted countermeasures such as improvements to windows, netting and grills to stop drones successfully delivering cargo such as drugs and weapons. And in January 24, restricted fly zones were introduced around all closed prisons and young offender institutions, supporting police and prison staff to disrupt illegal drone use. Ultimately, it is crucial that we tackle demand. Almost half of people entering prisons have a drug problem, so we must get them into the right treatment to tackle the drug misuse, which is so often a driver of their reoffending. Contraband supply and illicit economy drive violence, self-harm, instability, preventing offenders from engaging in rehabilitative activity. We are working to crack down on the levels of violence and drugs in our prison, Mr. Speaker, and the illicit economy is unfortunately highly profitable. Prices for drugs and other commodities are between 10 and 100 times the street values. An A4 sheet of paper laced with drugs can be worth £1,000, so we must tackle the organised crime gangs behind it. And that's why we have invested in a dedicated, serious and organised crime unit who will work with law enforcement agencies to disrupt these sophisticated criminal networks. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to take a multifaceted approach to drones and the disruption that they cause to our prison system.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Given this is a question of national security, I find it astonishing that the Lord Chancellor can't be bothered to turn up to the House today. Yesterday, the Chief Inspector of Prisons warned.
I think you repeat, Preston. I think we don't need to anymore.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday, the Chief Inspector of Prisons warned that the police and prison service have, and I quote, ceded the airspace above two high-security prisons to organised crime groups. The result is that organised crime gangs are able to deliver drugs, phones and weapons like zombie knives to inmates with impunity due to the absence of basic security measures like functional CCTV, protective netting and window repairs. Across two visits in September and October, he described a damning picture of thriving illicit economies that jeopardise the safety of dedicated prison staff. In HMP Manchester, almost 4 in 10 prisoners have tested positive in mandatory drug tests. And in HMP Long Lartin, the figure was nearly 3 in 10. These two prisons hold some of the most dangerous men in our country, including murderers and terrorists. And if organised crime gangs can deliver phones and drugs to inmate cells, they could be delivering serious weapons and explosives as well. The Chief Inspector said the potential for escapes or hostage-taking is an enormous concern. This could not be more serious. The situation has become, in the words of the Chief Inspector, a threat to national security. Now, I don't pretend these problems are entirely new, but they have deteriorated and they need urgent action. So can the Minister provide the timeframes for fixing the most basic security measures? What visits has the Lord Chancellor made to HMP Manchester and to HMP Long Lartin? And if not, when does she intend to go? Because little else could be more pressing. What discussions has she held with the prison governors? Can she assure the House, or the Minister assure the House, that the government have confidence in the senior management to restore order? And does she agree with the Chief Inspector that the failure to grip this situation is a serious indictment of their department.
Mr. Speaker, the failure to grip this situation, well, who had 14 years to grip this situation? At least this government is taking action in the first...
Thank you. Carry on, Mr. Dakin.
This government at least is taking action within the first 6 months. He will know, the honourable member, that drone sightings around prisons increased over 770% between 2019 and 23. That was on his government's watch. Much like everything in our prisons, his government has left it for us to fix the broken system and clean up their mess. It's a bit rich for him to come here and lecture us when he's had 14 years to put this right. We are installing new CCTV systems, netting and other countermeasures to combat drones, clamp down on the contraband and fuels violence behind bars, tackling drones through a cross-government approach, as well as learning from our international counterparts to support our efforts. We are working, Mr. Speaker, with our Five Eyes partners, because this is not a UK problem, this is a global problem, and that's why we're working with our Five Eyes partners to deal with it, who are facing the same issues across their prison estates, along with the Home Office and the Ministry of Defence to address this. We have 99 X-ray body scanners in 96 prisons, providing full coverage of closed adult and male estate to prevent internal smuggling of illicit contraband. So we are taking action while they just spout.
Chair of the Select Committee, Andy Slaughter.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The Minister will no doubt be pleased that the Justice Committee has just announced an inquiry into drugs in prisons with an emphasis on the use of drones by organised crime gangs to supply inmates. What makes it easy for drones to access prisons is the appalling state of prison maintenance. There's a £1.8 billion backlog which didn't accrue in the last 6 months. So the Shadow Secretary of State's surprise is in itself surprising. But what is the timetable for repairing the problems in prisons and getting to grips with that maintenance backlog?
Minister.
My honourable friend is completely right that the prison maintenance programme that we inherited was in a state, and that's why the Chancellor announced an increase to prison maintenance in the budget, which means there will be £500 million boost to the budget for prison maintenance over the next couple of years. So that's important. And he's right also to say that we need to grip this, and that's why the Prisons Minister in the other place has visited Manchester and is regularly being updated on the situation there.
Judge Babarinde, the Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sorry, that is the word that was missing from the Shadow Justice Secretary's statement just now. An NAO report that was done said of the then Conservative Treasury's investment in prison maintenance and security that capital budget allocations for prisons have been well below the level needed. Who was a Treasury Minister at that time? None other than the Shadow Justice Secretary. Now, today's report is the latest chapter in a catalogue of Tory prison failures which have scuppered their mission to reduce reoffending and therefore let down victims of crime. So will the Minister tell us about a new approach to better empower governors with the investment and the autonomy needed to properly invest in prison maintenance and security, and also what investment is he going to make in prison officer recruitment through programmes like Unlocked Graduate Scheme, which are critical to help drive security in our prisons?
Minister.
The honourable member is right about the failures missing in the question asked earlier, but he's also right to ask what the government is doing, Mr. Speaker, in terms of supporting prison officers and prison governors, and we're investing in that, and we will be announcing a new programme for training and developing new governors very shortly.
Alex Burris-Curtis.
Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for that statement as we go on another faux outrage of the party opposite, when they themselves were the ones who ceded the airspace after 14 years of colossal failure in our justice system. I wonder what the Minister could tell us about the lessons we can learn from their failure in order to tackle drugs in our prisons, which we know are a big driver of, for example, drone drops.
Minister.
Well, the lesson is that we need to work with prison governors, we need to work with the police, which we are doing. We need to invest in in actions to deal with this, and that's exactly what we're doing. We're working with everybody in the system to sort this mess out.
Nick Timothy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Apart from the serious security concerns this activity raises, it also shows that prisons bring resource pressures for local police forces. In West Suffolk, where we have High Point Prison, which is due to grow very significantly in the years ahead, the police have asked me to ask the Minister to ensure that they receive additional funding to reflect this pressure. Will he do so?
The Honourable Member is right to say that it is important that local police forces work strongly with the HMPPS on this issue, and that's what's happening. He will know that funding both locally and nationally is dealt with in an appropriate way.
Graham Morris.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, the Prison Officers Association have been saying for the last 5 years that the threat of drones is destabilising our prisons and poses a massive security risk. Can I draw the Minister's attention to the anti-drone system at HMP Guernsey, which very effectively prevents this threat? Can we expect this new system to be implemented in all prisons in England and Wales?
I thank the honourable friend for his question. Anything that works will be built upon. That's part of it. But we're dealing here in a situation where technology has been accelerated through the learning through the Ukraine war in terms of drone technology, and we know we need to work very hard to keep ahead of the felons on this.
Gavin Williamson. Sir Gavin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We all appreciate the destructive impact of drugs in our prisons, and in Stone Great Worley and Penkridge we have the largest cluster of prisons in the United Kingdom, with HMP Featherstone, HMP Oakwood and YOI Brinsford. The prison officers do an amazing job trying to tackle this issue, but what specific measures can the Minister bring forward to support the work that prison officers are doing to try and make sure that the prisoners ultimately get onto the path of rehabilitation and kick the habit of drugs?
Minister.
The honourable member is absolutely right. The prison officers do an outstanding job, and I want to take the opportunity to commend the work of prison officers up and down this country, Mr. Speaker. I draw attention to one thing, that there are 80 prisons now have incentivised substance-free living units, providing a supportive environment for prisoners who commit to living drug-free with regular drug tests and incentives, and this project appears to be working.
Dr. Rosanna Allenkamp.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. There has been a long-standing issue at Wandsworth Prison in my constituency, which sees multiple drone drops every single week. With a lack of CCTV, no netting and high staff vacancies, there's little that can be done to combat this. With the £100 million investment announced into the prison, can the Minister please ensure that all of these issues will be addressed, as this will go a significantly long way to ameliorating these issues?
Minister.
My honourable friend is absolutely right that we need to work hard to address these issues, but if there was a simple solution, the previous administration would have waved that magic wand and we wouldn't be sat here today. So it is important that the work that's ongoing by prison governors, supported by HMPPS across the country and by ministers, gets to the bottom of this and sorts things out, which is what we're trying to do.
Just Bramford.
Mr. Speaker, LiveLink Aerospace in my constituency of Chichester is a surveillance company that's created a technology that's being used on Royal Navy ships, in airports and on private yachts. This technology could be crucial in maintaining the no-fly zones above prisons, which was introduced in January last year. So will the Minister explore this technology specifically, and will he come to my constituency to visit LiveLink Aerospace so he can see what the technology can do?
Minister.
It's very important we take advantage of what intelligence is out there, and I'd be very happy if she can write to me to follow that appropriately up with her and the business involved.
Olivia Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Minister agree with me that the party opposite left our prisons in crisis, with drug and drone use rife? And will he outline the urgent steps his government is taking to ensure that such colossal failure can never happen again?
Well, my honourable friend is absolutely right, Mr. Speaker. We inherited a prison population 99.7% full, a situation where the police and the courts were in danger of not being able to lock people up. That was an abrogation of duty on behalf of the party opposite. We've rolled up our sleeves, we've tackled that, and we're going to tackle this problem as well.
Sir Julian Lewis.
May I thank the Minister for a very positive meeting recently on an unrelated subject, but may I ask him, is the main problem the detection of the incoming drones or the ability to impede the deliveries once the drones have been detected?
I thank the honourable member for the very positive meeting I had with him and officials and a business locally recently. But the answer to his question is both those things are issues.
Kevin McKenna.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Visiting the 3 prisons in my constituency in the Sheppey prison cluster, it is very, very clear to see the degradation of the prison estate that's happened over the last 14 years. And talking to prison officers who are my constituents as well as working in the constituency, you can hear the problems that they face day in, day out. It takes more than a few signs saying no drones to stop these drones. I want to know from the Minister what he will do to help support and listen to prison officers and the Prison Officers Association in tackling this. They are under a lot of threat and pressure from organised crime, and will he meet with me to discuss this further?
I'm very happy to meet with my honourable friend. If he would drop me a note to remind me, I will do that. But we are ongoing. The Prisons Minister is meeting this week with the officials of the Prison Officers Association. Whenever we make a visit to prisons, as I do regularly, I meet with the Prison Officers Association representative in that prison. These are key partners in tackling the problems that we've inherited from the previous government.
Bradley Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. These prisons make sure that our national security is not compromised because they house some of the most dangerous threats to our society. In government, the Conservatives introduced legislation to make it an automatic offence to fly drones within 400 metres of any closed prison. What assurances can the Minister give to this House that those who commit such offences will feel the full force of the law?
Minister.
That was a very important action by the previous government, which was supported by Labour in opposition quite correctly. And anybody found guilty of flying drones appropriately, which is detected and appropriately followed, the prosecutions will follow.
Ruth Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Welsh Affairs Select Committee recently visited Park Prison in Wales, where we saw for ourselves the types of contraband being smuggled into prisons by drones. One of the biggest problems that was reported to us was the use of multiple drones all at the same time coming in, which makes it difficult for security to actually bring them down, even though they're using CCTV. So what is the Minister doing to ensure that the use of these drones are outlawed to keep our prisoners safe and secure?
Minister.
The security and safety of prisoners and prison officers is very important, Mr. Speaker. My honourable friend sat to my right and the Prisons Minister recently visited Park Prison and are well aware of the issues and are working with the prison authorities to address them.
James Wilde.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 2 months ago in the House, I raised concerns that HMP Garth had been likened to an airport because of the number of drones illegally flying drugs into the prison. In response, the Lord Chancellor told me that the Prisons Minister was meeting the Governor and thinking about how to deal with that problem. Well, what precise action has he taken since then, and what action will he take today to deal with the problems at HMP Manchester?
Well, actions are being taken, things are being done. I've mentioned the issues around windows, netting and bars. But frankly, this is a security issue. We're up against organised crime. We're not going to talk about in public the issues that are being considered, because that would not be the best way of tackling the issue.
Chris Vince.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I recognise that this issue is very much related to drugs, and as somebody that previously worked for a homeless charity, I've seen the huge amount of damage that drugs do on people's lives and their families as well. I wonder if the government could outline what they're doing about the wider issue of drug supply, both in prisons and out of prisons.
Minister.
Well, as I've already said, it's very important that we tackle drug dependency in prisons. The fact that we have a little bit more space in prisons now allows more work to go on with that. But that's tackling drug dependency. We know that education and employment help to reduce reoffending as well, and that's why we've committed to improving prisoners' access not only to drug support and programmes, but also to purposeful activity and employment.
Lewis Cocking.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The government has said time and time again that it wants to smash the criminal gangs that are illegally smuggling illegal migrants into the UK. Yet the government can't even smash the gangs that are smuggling drugs and phones into our prisons. How can my residents of Broxbourne trust the government to smash the gangs?
Minister.
The residents of Broxbourne will be well aware that for 14 years the government that he supported has failed to tackle this problem. This government is rolling up its sleeves and getting on with it.
Jenrick.
Mr. Speaker, this is a long-standing problem and the last government didn't do anywhere near enough to deal with this. One issue they did do was when the former Prime Minister was Lord Chancellor, Liz Truss organised for more dogs to bark at drones around prisons and assured us that that would work. Has the Ministry of Justice done an assessment on how effective that policy was?
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I think everybody agrees that that policy was barking.
In which case, Jim Shannon.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank the Minister very much for his answers to the questions today and for his clear commitment to make changes that will make a difference. In Northern Ireland prisons, the issue of contraband has been a difficult one to get on top of. And now with the news today, drones being so successfully used in the UK, there is obvious cause for concern. There is real concerns that the use of drones may be more prevalent. And will the Minister perhaps outline how he can ensure that the steps that will be taken will be equally applied across this great United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and that any additional funding required would be allocated for that purpose? Thanks so much.
I thank the honourable member for his question. I think any lessons learned need to be applied across the United Kingdom, and that will happen. And we need to work with our Five Eyes partners to make sure we've got the very best actions to take place. Northern Ireland needs to get the best of that as well.
Right, that completes the question. I'll just let the front bench change over.